My daughter came to me at 16 years old and said she was non-binary, but only sometimes. Like some days she would feel more male than female, and sometimes she would feel like neither. She wanted me to ask her every day what day it was, and then refer to her as that pronoun of the day. I told her that wasn't going to fly. Growing up, I spent a lot of time on LiveJournal during the old Bun Self and Zen Self, Zer Self days. People who think this is new to this generation are fooling themselves. I told her that I would call her the pronoun she wanted and do my best to remember it day to day, but she was going to have to tell me what she wanted for that day. I wasn't going to play a daily guessing game. This went on for about a week or two until she finally seemed to grow tired or bored and just said I could call her her, though she still identifies as non-binary. Fine. At least when it was going on, she wanted she, he, or they. I'm sorry, but I couldn't have done fox, self, fox, them with a straight face. So that's the pronoun story, and looking back where I think things started to go off the handle. Here's my real question. My daughter is now 18 years old, pregnant, and seems to have lost her goddamned mind. Or I'm a jerk. You choose. This year has been a struggle. She wanted to take a gap year before she goes to community college, but can't keep a job. Apparently, retail situations are too phobic against her non-binary state. My child looks, acts, dresses exactly as a young adult female, by the way. When I ask how people are being phobic against her, she gets as prickly as a cactus, so I really don't know the details. She's been through 4 or 5 jobs this year, quit all of them. She won't consider call centers that aren't face-to-face because she doesn't like to talk on phones, and is apparently looking for a remote job without any luck. She's been unemployed since Thanksgiving. She quit her last job on Black Friday, in fact, and I was on the verge of laying down the law, telling her she either needs to go to school this upcoming semester full-time or get a full-time job or move out with her friends. But now she's come to me and she's 5 months pregnant. She's very angry at me, says it's my fault because, 1, I didn't put her on puberty-blocking hormones when she came to me 2 years ago. 2, she believes I am, in fact, trying to feminize her by getting her birth control. The pill. She's been throwing her prescription away. This is where I might be the jerk. I called her a little idiot. We don't use that sort of language in my house, and I never call people names, especially my own child, but at that moment I could just see red. The hormone thing is a non-issue in my opinion because this is the first time I ever heard of her wanting hormones. What was I supposed to do? Go back in time? As for the birth control, it's also the first time I'm hearing anything about this. There are non-pill options that don't have estrogen. If that was her want, all she had to do was ask, and I would have driven her to the doctor myself. Or she could have taken the car she has and done it. She has her own medical card even. Though to be fair, I don't know how she would have managed the copay without a job. I know for a fact her old high school gave out free condoms like candy because her friends were always giggling over flavored sample packs and even blew a few of them up like balloons and left them around the house one time. She had all the birth control she could ever want and used none of it. We're way past the date of baby on a living. Again, I would have helped her if this had been her wish. We live in a baby on a living protected state and can't afford it. She's known she was pregnant since about 2 months and has come to think of her baby like a sibling. She expects me to raise it like it was mine, that this is my duty, in fact, because she says it is my refusal to accept her non-binary state that led to her being pregnant. So she was going to get a brother or sister, and I was going to have another child. You can say my language grew, sterner. Versions of "get your head out of your butt" and "congratulations, mommy, you have some hard decisions to make," and I said I would absolutely not raise her baby for her. She also refused to say who the father was. Now that I've cooled down, I'm really hoping she has a secret boyfriend. She does have some friends who were born male, but now also don't identify that way. We didn't even get there, as I lost my mind when she said she thinks of her own baby as a sibling and wants me to raise it like my own child. She's locked herself in her room loudly wailing. I feel like crap warmed over. She's been in there for 12 hours, and as she has an attached bathroom, probably won't be coming out until she gets hungry. Considering it's been half a day, I think she has snacks stored. I also don't know where to go from here. Being pregnant sucks and messes with your head, so I'd like to blame that and the fear she must be feeling, but I have the bad feeling I either raised a spoiled brat or someone with an emerging personality disorder. So I need to know from people who aren't emotionally involved, and maybe some people who are more in tune with this whole non-binary thing than I am. What do I do to help while also making her responsible for her own child? How can I help my daughter accept she must do basically the most feminine thing you can do, give birth and possibly breastfeed, while being sensitive that she's non-binary? Am I just a big jerk here? Typing all this out, it feels like my daughter is lost in crazy town. I'm still not raising her baby, but at what point do I drag a legal adult to the hospital? Edit. You might disagree with my choices or wording, but I'm reporting people who call this bait. It's not. It's the middle of the night, and she has decided to pack some of her clothes and stay with one of her friends, one who I suspect is the baby daddy. Before she left, she told me that she already called the police and let them know that she was leaving of her own free will and was not in danger. Like I was going to report an 18-year-old adult as a runaway or something? It was insulting. I told her she needs to work out details if she wants to adopt with the father, and she was welcome back home when she had a plan in place. It was short because I heard her on the way out. I think she just meant to leave without saying anything. Thank you for your kind comments and advice, Reddit. I'm going to sleep. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Even if she is non-binary and doesn't want to take hormonal birth control, a lot of cis women also don't like hormonal birth control due to too many side effects. But did she know about a wonderful thing called condoms? They are available everywhere, easy to use, and are safe for preventing both pregnancy and diseases. She still has a female genitalia, regardless of the gender she identifies with. And accepting a weenie inside without birth control means risking getting pregnant. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Apparently, your daughter expected you to somehow read her mind. It's sad that she doesn't appreciate everything you've done for her and only wants more and more from you. Also, she's an adult now and should take responsibility for her own child by herself. I'm sure you'll be there for her anyway when she gives birth. You are her mom after all. Hopefully, she'll grow up and understand what was wrong in her behavior. Now for the update. Hey Reddit, it's been 2 weeks since my last post about my daughter, and oh boy, do I have an update for you. Buckle up because things have taken some turns. First off, let me give you a bit of history that I didn't mention before. My daughter has always been fiercely independent, or at least she liked to think so. She's the kind of person who would make a big show of doing things her own way, even if it meant making life harder for herself. I remember when she was 14, she insisted on fixing her bike herself, even though she had no idea how. Ended up making it worse and had to walk to school for a week. That stubborn streak has definitely played into our current situation. So, after she stormed out and went to stay with her friend, I was left reeling. I felt like I was failing as a parent, but I also knew I couldn't just let her walk all over me. I needed to stand my ground about not raising her baby for her. The silence from her end lasted a few days, which were some of the longest days of my life. I kept expecting a call or a text, but nothing came. I was worried sick, but also angry that she was being so stubborn. Then, out of the blue, she came back home. She walked in like nothing had happened, and for a moment, I was just relieved to see her. But that relief quickly turned to shock when she announced that she had broken up with her friend, the one I suspected might be the baby's father. Turns out I was right about him. They had been secretly seeing each other, and he was indeed the father. But here's the jaw-dropping part. He wanted to be involved, wanted to support her and the baby, but she pushed him away. She said she couldn't be with someone who didn't understand her struggles with gender identity. I couldn't believe it. Here was someone willing to step up, and she was just pushing him away because of her own issues. The heartbreak in this situation is multi-layered. There's the obvious heartbreak of a young relationship falling apart, especially with a baby on the way. But there's also the heartbreak of watching my daughter struggle with her identity to the point where it's affecting her life decisions in such a massive way. In the days that followed, things got even more heated between us. She started talking about how she was going to be a single parent and how she didn't need anyone's help. I tried to reason with her, to explain that raising a child is hard work and that it's okay to accept help, but she wouldn't hear it. Then came the confrontation that I never saw coming. She accused me of never supporting her, of always trying to make her fit into a box. I was floored. I've always tried to be there for her, to understand her, even when I didn't fully get what she was going through. But in her eyes, I was the enemy. I tried to explain how I felt, how I was just trying to help her prepare for the reality of being a parent, but it was like talking to a wall. She was so wrapped up in her own world that she couldn't see how much I cared. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, she dropped another bombshell. She told me she was considering giving the baby up for adoption. I didn't know how to feel. On one hand, it might be for the best if she wasn't ready to be a parent. But on the other hand, the thought of my grandchild being given away was heartbreaking. We've been going back and forth on this for days now. She's torn between wanting to keep the baby and feeling like she can't handle it. And I'm torn between wanting to support her decision and wanting to convince her to let me help. It's been a journey of emotions, and I'm just trying to keep up. I still don't know what the future holds for my daughter or my grandchild, but I'm hoping we can find some common ground before it's too late. My husband ignores my pleas for help with our newborn, so I refuse to serve him. He sulks in the guest room. But then, both my husband and I work full-time. I work from home, and we have a 2.5-month-old baby who is exclusively breastfed. For the past 2 days, our daughter has been screaming nonstop. She's cluster feeding, but she's also fighting sleep very badly. She starts to fall asleep and immediately starts flipping out. I am so overwhelmed and exhausted. Thank God my job isn't a call position, or I would be in trouble, because it absolutely would not have happened. And my husband hasn't helped at all, because he's been at work and he has to get a full night's sleep because he's a driver. He's home 4 hours before he has to go to sleep for work. So I'm depleted. And yes, he 100% knows this. I literally just sent him a text at 3 p.m. saying how exhausted I am and how the baby has not given me a single break all day, and told him to pick himself up something to eat for dinner because I would definitely not be cooking. Well, he gets home at 6:30 p.m. and immediately starts telling me how sick he is and starts following me everywhere, moaning, groaning, saying, ugh, etc. I tell him to go take a shower. He says no because he has no energy. I tell him to take Tylenol, and he says no. I go sit on the bed and attempt to decompress because I finally got the baby to sleep, and he curls up right behind me and won't stop touching me while moaning and groaning. I say, listen, I know you're feeling ill right now, and I'm sorry, but if I keep getting touched and followed, I'm probably going to snap. I've offered you solutions. Take one of them. He gets up and walks off without saying anything, but then the baby wakes up. So I got 5 minutes, 30 seconds of which I wasn't being touched. Well, at 8:40 p.m., so 30 minutes ago, I go and put the baby in her swing and go to make myself a bowl of cereal because I haven't eaten all day. But my husband is sitting directly in front of her swing gaming, so I had to scoot past him, and I touched his back on the way back through, and he goes, ooh, yeah, rub right there. So I said no. At this point, I'm all but fuming because I'm so overwhelmed. I get to the kitchen and he yells out, babe, will you get me something to eat? So I said a clipped, nope. He said, seriously? So I said, dead butt. I freaking told you to pick something up for yourself because I wasn't making anything for dinner. He snapped at this point and said, it's not like I was freaking asking you to cook me a meal. Jesus Christ, I feel like shoot too. And walks off to the bedroom. He texted me from the bedroom and said, I don't get it at all. You used to love taking care of me when I was sick. So I responded with, yeah, and you used to love making sure I was good in general, but you see me overwhelmed and still want me to cater to you instead of taking the slack off me for 5 goddamn minutes. He moved to the guest room now. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. My dear lady, this isn't about you being a jerk. You are exhausted and need a break and some support. Your husband needs to manage his own care and feeding. If you have someone who can watch your baby for even 30 minutes, please do. Even if you just sit in an empty bathtub with the door locked. Wishing you rest and a little untouched peace. Comment 2. Not the jerk. Being a parent is tough. He's an adult who knows how to take care of himself. Him choosing not to take the medicine is on him. You are a parent, one of the hardest jobs out there. If he can take care of himself, he should. There should be balance. You shouldn't do all the caring. You are human. You deserve a break. Now for the update. Hey Reddit, it's been a tense 3 days since my last post, and boy do I have an update for you. So, after my husband moved to the guest room, I was left alone with our baby, who, as you know, was having a tough time sleeping and was constantly feeding. I was running on fumes, and my husband was apparently down with some sort of illness. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the baby crying, and my husband was nowhere to be seen. I figured he was still feeling under the weather and decided to let him rest. I spent the day juggling work and the baby, feeling like a zombie. But then, something unexpected happened. My husband emerged from the guest room in the afternoon, looking sheepish. He came over, took the baby from my arms, and told me to go take a nap. I was so surprised I could barely move, but the exhaustion won, and I practically collapsed into bed. I woke up a few hours later to the smell of food. My husband had ordered takeout from my favorite restaurant and was feeding the baby a bottle of pumped milk. I couldn't believe it. We sat down to eat, and he apologized for being so inconsiderate. He explained that he had been feeling overwhelmed too, with a new baby and the pressure of his job. We talked it out and agreed to communicate better and support each other more. The next day, things started to look up. My husband took the day off work to help out, and we took turns caring for the baby. He even managed to get her to sleep for a solid 4 hours, which felt like a miracle. We spent the day catching up on sleep and just enjoying being a family. It was like we were finally finding our rhythm. But just when I thought we were getting the hang of it, the baby had a blowout diaper that went everywhere. It was one of those moments that could have sent us spiraling, but instead, we ended up laughing about it. My husband and I cleaned up the mess together, and it felt like we were a team again. On the third day, my husband surprised me by coming home early from work with a bouquet of flowers and a heartfelt card. He had arranged for his mom to come over and watch the baby for a few hours so we could have some time to ourselves. We went for a walk in the park, something we hadn't done since the baby was born. It was nice to just be with each other, not as parents or as a sick person and a caretaker, but as the couple we were before all the chaos. We came back home feeling refreshed, and my mother-in-law had managed to get the baby to sleep. She told us she'd be happy to come over once a week to give us a break. It was such a relief to know we had that support. I refused to return a hidden stash we found in our new house. But when the neighbor's kid cried, we sold our stuff to make it right. We just bought a property that had been abandoned. We visited the place a few times before we had it totally renovated to get an idea of what we wanted done and talk about it with our contractor. During those visits, we brought our kids and they would explore while we were looking at things. While they were exploring, they found a hidden stash of treasure hidden. We assumed it must have been left by the previous owner's kid. It had little knickknacks and toys that a kid might collect. There was also a diary that was clearly written by a child, as well as some cash, about $370 with change. My wife and I decided to let them keep the treasure they found. They were excited about it. It's not like we had any chance of returning it to the owner, since this house hadn't been lived in for over a decade, and whoever lived there previously was long gone. We weren't around much at the house while renovations were happening. They're done now, though, so we've started moving in. We have a distant neighbor that lives on the other side of the wooded area behind our property who came to visit us. He asked if anyone had found the stash. Apparently, his daughter used to sneak into the house, and she was the one who hid the treasure there. I did tell him that my kids had found it several months ago, and I think that they threw a lot of it away or had gotten lost by now, but I told him I would check. True enough, my kids didn't have much of the treasure anymore or didn't know where it was. My daughter still had the diary because it was a fancy one she liked, and it still had a lot of empty pages. I was able to get her to agree to give it back as long as she could rip out her pages first. My wife did rip them out very carefully, but there weren't many pages left anymore because our daughter had used up a lot of them. There were still the original pages the neighbor girl had written, so I thought I might as well offer that back. It was not well received, though, because it was fairly clear my daughter had read the pages as she had left comments about things, which makes things awkward, since there was stuff in there about the neighbor girl's crushes. The neighbor's wife was all up in arms because we let our daughter read her daughter's diary and write comments on it. My wife had skimmed through the thing when it was first found, and there was nothing too scandalous in there for a kid to read. So we didn't see a problem with it. The neighbors said it was obvious it was a problem since we had ripped out our daughter's pages so she could keep her entries private. I do think it's a little different, though, because we had originally thought it was an old diary of someone long gone, and people read old diaries all the time. The money was another issue, because it was apparently money that the neighbor's daughter had been saving up from birthdays and Christmas and chores for years. So they want us to pay it back. Our kids have spent all the money already. Honestly, I don't feel like we should have to pay them back the money. It isn't an insignificant amount of money, and when we bought the house, everything inside became ours. I also feel like they should have let their daughter hang out in an abandoned house. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. So they let their daughter trespass into a house before you legally bought it and used it for her stash. Never mind the fact that no action was taken once it became obvious the house had started to be renovated. Only after all is said and done and you're moving in are they suddenly concerned. I don't know what's worse, the parents' entitlement after no action and demanding repayment, or the fact they let their kid break into a house for her own fort. Comment 2, not the idiot. You have no obligation to return the money, but I would give her the money back considering it's a child's money she spent her whole life saving up. I can't imagine how devastating losing everything is to a little child. If I were that child, I would consider you and your family AHs for the rest of my life, and I would hold a grudge. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support on my last post. It's been a tense week, and I've got some updates for you. So, after the whole diary mess with our neighbors, things took a turn for the worse. My wife and I had a long talk about the money situation. We both agreed that it wasn't right to keep it, but we also didn't feel like we should be out of pocket because of a mistake that wasn't ours. We decided to offer to pay half of it back, hoping it would smooth things over. When I went over to talk to the neighbors, I found out that their daughter, let's call her Emily, was absolutely heartbroken. She had been saving that money for something special, a trip with her late grandmother that never happened because her grandmother passed away. That money was the last thing she had to remember her by. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Here we were, arguing over cash when this poor kid had lost a piece of her heart. The confrontation with the neighbors was intense. Emily's mom was furious, saying we had no respect for their family's memories. Her dad, on the other hand, seemed more understanding but still hurt. He explained how Emily had been using the abandoned house as an escape after her grandmother's death. It was her secret place to feel close to her again. I offered the half payment, but Emily's mom wouldn't hear of it. She said it was all or nothing. I could see the pain in Emily's eyes, and it was clear that this was about more than just money. It was about her lost connection to her grandmother. Back at home, my wife and I were at odds. She felt we were being pushed into a corner over something that wasn't our fault. I couldn't stop thinking about Emily's face, though. It was a tough night, and we barely spoke. The next day, my daughter came to me, upset. She had overheard us talking and felt guilty about spending the money. She had grown attached to the diary too, and reading about Emily's crushes and secrets made her feel like she knew her. She wanted to do something to make it right. We sat down as a family and decided to sell some of our things to raise the money. It was tough seeing my kids let go of their toys and games, but they were determined to fix things. We managed to scrape together just enough to cover what was taken. I went back to the neighbor's house, this time with my whole family. We handed over the money, and my daughter apologized to Emily. It was a tense moment, but then something unexpected happened. Emily hugged my daughter. She said she wasn't mad about the diary, she was just sad about her grandmother. The two girls started talking, and before we knew it, they were laughing and sharing stories. Emily's parents invited us in, and we spent the evening talking and actually getting to know each other. It turned out that Emily's dad and I had a lot in common, and our wives bonded over their love of gardening. As we left their house that night, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the money or the diary anymore. It was about two families coming together, healing a little girl's heartbreak, and finding friendship in an unexpected place. But just when we thought things were settling down, another surprise hit us. Emily's mom pulled out an old photo album. In it were pictures of the house from years ago, with Emily's grandmother standing in what was now our living room. The look on my wife's face was priceless. She had always felt a strange connection to the house, and now we knew why. It turned out that Emily's grandmother and my wife's aunt were best friends back in the day. The history of our home was more intertwined with our neighbors than we ever could have imagined. The week ended with us planning a joint yard sale with the neighbors. The kids were excited to set up a lemonade stand, and the adults were looking forward to sharing more stories about the house and its past. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.